Hi, everybody. Welcome to NewsNite for Friday, January 13th. Great to have you with us. What took so long? The city of Canton decides to fire one of its officers caught repeatedly on tape being verbally abusive. We'll talk about it. The Akron Public Schools decide to pull a levy they had planned to put on the ballot. Are they making the right decision? And the ongoing saga of the city of Akron's audit has another chapter. Those stories and more next on NewsNite. Winter has definitely arrived. Great to have you with us on a cold Friday night. Great to welcome our panel tonight. Phil Trexler joins us this week from the Akron Beacon-Journal. Great to see Stephanie Warsmith with us, also from the Akron Beacon-Journal. And always great to see Larry States here from WAKR. People forget how to drive when the snow starts falling in the Akron area, don't they?
This is very true. What's that white stuff?
Everybody's, and it's Friday the 13th, too, so. Yeah. But winter has kind of escaped us. But we begin this week with videos that have actually gone viral. A Canton police officer named Daniel Harless, many months ago, exposed for being verbally abusive, downright, threatening people that he dealt with on a daily basis. This week, the city, in an investigation, they decided to fire him. Surprised that it took so long?
Yeah, I don't know if there are so many rules because of the union and things like that you have to go through, he had to go through as a police officer. But I think that they were thorough about it, and I read the decision by Mr. Ream, the public safety director. And let's face it, Officer Harless had problems, had not been treated for them, was aware that he had post-traumatic stress disorder, had not been treated for it for years, and apparently had been told he should be treated for it, had not been treated for it, and had gone on. And why the department allowed him to continue without being treated for that, I don't know. That's something that wasn't answered as far as the decision from the safety director. But I just wonder how this guy was allowed to get by with this for so long, and no one blew the whistle and said, you can't do that, or disciplined him, or did something else to him, or put him on suspension for a while or something like that. I mean, I don't think anybody is, anybody who's stopped by a police officer like that thinks he's sane, number one. And number two, if he had this disorder, he should have been treated for it a long time ago. Maybe we wouldn't have come to this. Maybe he would still have his job and things would have smoothed out for him. Sure. But obviously he was having issues and problems, and the only thing he knew to do was take it out on the people that didn't agree with him, or when he went to, like a traffic stop or something, and he didn't like the offense they committed, then he took off on them. And it's really too bad.
I think part of the problem with post-traumatic stress disorder, though, too, one of the symptoms is probably not seeking help for that. And he'll probably cite that. Obviously, there's going to be an appeal of this. The union's not going to back away. He'll pursue reinstatement at some point. But again, these things have to be done thoroughly. An officer's career is on the line here, so you want these to be done properly, but also too you want them to be able to be upheld on an appeal. And certainly there's going to be an appeal there. But when you have a video like that, it's there.
And we're not talking one video. We're talking multiple videos. And we're not talking about just threats of violence. We're talking about threats to kill people.
Right. It's certainly not appropriate conduct for an officer. But
you can imagine what it was like if you're somebody stopped by this guy, okay? And then all of a sudden he starts ranting and raving at you because, I think the one Canton man had a concealed carry permit that he pulled out, and that just set Harless off. And, he called him stupid and everything else. He just, that was scary enough for anybody. If you're stopped in a traffic stop, especially at night, and somebody comes up to you and starts talking to you that way, they have the power. They can do whatever they want. They've got the gun, and you don't. So it's really kind of scary.
You ever see anything like this, Steph?
No, I think that this is an example of maybe why we need dash cams, and I do think this is the exception. I mean, I think most officers do a good job out there, but, when you have an officer who is behaving in this way, obviously this is the proof. Otherwise, it might be, a citizen's or multiple citizens' word against his, and the tendency is to believe the officer, which, I think in the many cases, Phil covers cops now, I did before. Most of the time when somebody calls and complains about an officer, berating them or roughing them up or whatever, a lot of times they're doing something wrong. That wasn't the case here. It was really the officer who was acting inappropriately.
So should this investigation end, or should sergeants, lieutenants, captains, et cetera, be questioned, interviewed, possibly disciplined because they didn't stop this. They didn't corral this.
No, it depends on who knew what and when did they know it. And certainly there needed to be some sort of intervention going on there. They have the dash cams videos. They know, it's easily accessible to them. It's unfortunate that it did carry on this long. It's unfortunate that he didn't get the help, if in fact he really needed it.
Well, that's the Canton Police. Other police agencies here in the area also busy continuing their case against Richard Beasley, the accused Craigslist killer. Some developments this week, Phil, in relation to other charges with him.
Yeah, the allegation, of course, is that he was under the ruse of helping out downtrodden folks, that he was actually running a house of prostitution in Akron. They supplemented the indictment in that case. We're also expecting to finally see an indictment in the Craigslist killing. Summit County is going to handle it. Beasley is expected to face a death penalty. The prosecutor's already gone on record saying that they're going to pursue that, and at least 3 of the killings, that they're all going to be tried here in Summit County, in addition to the attempted murder case. So it certainly will put a spotlight on the Summit County judicial system, a real test for them to bring and seek the death penalty against
Well, you're
him.
talking Brogan Rafferty, the teenager
Right.
involved. I understood he was brought back here to Summit County.
Well, he's being housed here because of the necessity that he is going to be tried as an adult. That decision was made last month, so he cannot be housed with other adult prisoners. He's a juvenile. He needs to be segregated, so there's no contact there. I was in contact with the courts down there last week, and next week they expect the grand jury to hear the case against Brogan Rafferty for consideration of an indictment. And obviously he's already, the prosecutor's gone on record saying that Brogan Rafferty is cooperating. He expects Rafferty to take some sort of plea in exchange for testimony against Beasley. So the wheels are turning.
Is that why he's in Summit County, though, Larry? Because they're talking to him, interviewing him?
Well, yeah, I'm sure they are. They have to build their case against him. The thing that with Beasley that I can't understand is how he was able to deceive so many people for so long. He puts up this front of helping people and doing this, and then if indeed he is doing this, in the background, all of the other, the prostitution ring, that type of thing. Police called him a con man. That's what they called him, which means that he apparently had the ability to make people think he was doing something right when he was doing something wrong, and he obviously had a good cover. And you just wonder for how long this went on. How many years did this go back? What other cases could he have been involved in? I think there's going to be a lot of mysteries unraveled here.
You got to remember too, he had great access to the judicial system.
Yes, he did.
In Summit County. I mean, he's appearing before judges. The judges gave him the time to appear in court and to speak on behalf of some defendants.
Why did they buy it, though? I mean, these are pretty sharp judges here in Summit County.
Well,
why did they buy
I've
his
talked to
act?
some of Beasley's high school friends, and they say that this type of behavior goes way back. That he was able to persuade and manipulate people tremendously, and he's been doing it for years. And he's gotten good at it. He did a lot of time in prison, and sometimes prisons actually harden people, and they learn new tricks and new trades, and that's apparently what he did. You'll see a lot of Summit County judges will have to recuse themselves from hearing his cases because of their relationship with him. It's
So they were all
surprising.
taken.
Well, a lot of people, I guess, were taken. But you want to give some people the benefit of the doubt, apparently. And on the surface, it seemed as though he was a reformed Christian, and apparently he was not.
So, Stephanie, when this trial actually gets here, a lot of hype and hoopla, something short, what would you expect?
Oh, I think there'll be a lot because this really brought national attention when they were finding the bodies, and more and more kept piling on, and so I think there'll be a lot of interest here, and I think everyone is curious about, like Larry said, how long has this been going on? How was it that he was able to deceive so many people? I know in a letter that he wrote to Phil, he doesn't agree with his being deemed a con man. He obviously is claiming that he's not. So I'll be really interested to see how this all plays out in court.
Yeah, he certainly has a big hill to climb over, because certainly he's going to have the testimony of the guy who survived the gunshot wound.
Right.
He's going to have to face the testimony of Brogan Rafferty. So on the surface, it certainly looks like an easy basket for the prosecutors to win.
And we do see surprises in court, and since we have a little extra time in this segment, I want to ask you, Phil, about the case you covered yesterday, a surprise to many of the length of a sentence a local truck driver got for falling asleep. And falling asleep behind the wheel has been highly reported as becoming more and more a cause of accidents.
Right, and was a really emotional hearing in Portage County. Ed Slattery, who lost his wife, Susan, to a tragic car accident in August of 2010, wanted to send a message to not only the truck driver but to the trucking industry that there's more than 3,500 deaths every year related to commercial trucking, and that's way too many. And there's a lot of steps that need to be taken in order to bring more safety to the road. We've all been out there with truckers, and generally most of them are good drivers, but they're driving around a big vehicle on the same roads as our little Priuses, and there's certainly a lot of potential there for death.
But surprised to see he got a 5-year sentence.
Yeah, he got a 5-year sentence, and Doug Bow, the defendant there, cooperated fully with the investigation, but still got hammered with a 5-year sentence.
Now, here's the issue, too. It's just recently been addressed, or they're starting to address it now. That's the number of hours these truckers are behind the wheel trying to deliver their loads, and the fact that they cheat on their sleep because they're on a clock, and if they don't get the load to a certain point in time, they get penalized for that, especially if they work for a company or not an independent trucker. And so you wonder, now that Congress has even started paying attention to this now, the rules on how much rest that they have to have between trips, how many hours they can be behind the wheel, that type of thing. I think that needs to be addressed, and I think now we're beginning to see that being addressed. Unfortunately, though, we've had a lot of accidents, I think, that have happened because of the fact these truckers get tired behind the wheel. They could be very competent, very good drivers, but you know what? When you start getting drowsy and the body starts shutting down and forces you to, you're going to be, you're not going to be as alert at the wheel, and you can very easily have an accident, especially with so many tons of equipment that you're hauling around.
That is certainly a tough topic. We'd love to have you weigh in when you visit our show page over at newsnight.net.
For more NewsNight content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at newsnight.net.
A few weeks ago, we told you the Akron Public Schools would try again on the spring ballot to put another levy through for operating expenses. Now the date has changed on the primary. It's been moved up to March, so the Akron schools decide, you know what, we're not going to do this. We don't have enough time to launch a campaign. But with $20 million in cuts, how do they afford, Larry, to pull it off the ballot and not take a chance?
Let's put it this way. I think that they want more time. They have union negotiations coming up, and I think they want to get some contracts, signed and agreed to before they go back, because they don't know how much money they're going to have. They know now what the cuts are going to be, and they can go to the union and say, we have to cut $22 million from our budget. We have to have some help from you. If a levy would be passed in March, and then they would go into those negotiations, I think the contracts end in June or July, then all of a sudden the unions will say, well, hey, you passed a levy in March, so we want, we think we should be getting more. And the school district will say, well, we can't afford to do that. That money has to go elsewhere. I think those contract negotiations have a lot more weight than even the superintendent would admit. He did mention it briefly, but I think they have a lot of weight in this. There are a lot of factors involved that's going to determine what happens with these contracts. Number two, voters, they had a narrow loss, basically, 400 votes or so in November. And I think that given more time, they'll get these contract issues out of the way. The public will see a more stable school system where they have these contracts in place, and the district will be a lot more clear on what cuts that they're making. I think they want more time to sell to the public, okay, this is going to be the impact since we don't have money this year. Now, this money's not going to come until 2013, if it goes on the ballot and passes in November. So I think that this gives them more time to state their case and to prove through the cuts that they have to make this year and through the union contracts they're going to negotiate that, they're going to try to present the best face they can to the public and say, okay, now, you should be ready to approve a school levy because we've done all these things. I think they needed more time.
But as far as when it goes on the ballot, Stephanie, you've covered the schools. Is there a good time of the year to put a school levy on?
Well, I think there's a lot of strategic thought that goes into when you put a levy on the ballot. And, the danger of waiting until November is that you get one shot. There's not an election after that, and then, they would have to go on the ballot next year, and they would have to wait a whole other year to begin collecting any extra taxes. One of the things that I think is interesting is I wonder if they have thought about, there's this new August special election, which it didn't look like they were going to have that, and now they are going to have that. If they did decide to go in August, then they would at least get two shots. They could go on in August and November. But we talked about, the strategic thought that goes into that. There's an advantage in November because you're going to have a higher turnout in a presidential election than you would in August. I did call over to the elections board and check to see what the additional cost would be for the district if they decided to go on in August, just out of curiosity, because I knew we were going to be talking about it today. It's about $17,000, which isn't a big chunk of change, but it is an additional expense that they wouldn't have if they put it on in November. And then it also, like Larry was talking about, the negotiations, those may not be done before August comes around. So, I think there's a lot that they weigh.
What about going full out with ads and TV time and everything else versus the stealth campaign we've seen some districts do where they put up no signs, just don't go out of their way to tell anybody that it's on the ballot?
Well, they have more time if they wait till November anyway, and I agree with Stephanie, the fact that that's a presidential election, you're going to get more turnout. They may have weighed that and said, oh, yeah, we're going to get turnout in the primary, no doubt there's interest there, but in the presidential, we'll get even more of a turnout.
But as a strategy, and you guys have covered enough school levies, when does it make sense to just go full out, and when does it make sense to, kind of be quiet about it?
It depends on, I think, who you want to come out. Like if they thought going in August that they could, really get the parents and the teachers out, then they might try that. In November, you're going to have a high turnout all around, and so that's probably when you're going to have to, go full out and make sure you remind people, okay, you're going to vote for the president, but you need to vote on the school levy as well. So it's interesting, in terms of the campaigns and, when you do the stealth, when you go all out. But I think if they go in November, they probably need to go all out.
The cynic in me thinks that they're backing away from the primary because of the thought that a lot of more Republicans in the area are going to be going to the vote in the primaries, and they're obviously going to be voting against it. In November, you're going to have the Obama supporters coming out in full force.
Although it's true that there aren't that many Republicans in it.
There aren't, but the people who are going to be voting, there are a lot of people going to be switching ballots to vote Republican because of the contest there, for president, and so that's not an audience that the embraced necessarily by the Akron Public Schools, and that they'll wait till November when the Obama supporters are out in full force.
And how about also another issue may be how many other money issues are going to be on the ballot in November versus in March? Local issues. I don't see a lot of them at this point. There probably will be some, but they may be weighing the fact that they don't want the voters to go out and say, well, this, and this, they want me to raise my taxes to pay for it. And the school levy is just one more thing. If they can highlight that school levy, and it is the big thing that would happen as far as extra taxes, they could isolate and not have to share the spotlight with someone else, who's asking for an increase also.
But does the flip side happen? Does APS end up push somebody else off the ballot because, let's say, a zoo or a library or something like that, they don't want to be on the ballot with something else asking for money, so now they're going to have to wait so they don't compete?
That may be an issue, and they do look at that. You're right, they do look at that. These different agencies look at how many issues are on the ballot and how much of the money voters are being asked to give up extra money before they'll put an issue on. So it'll be interesting to see the maneuvering that happens now between now and November.
Because the ballot failed in November, they're going to have to close some schools early, likely a handful of schools. They would have closed anyway. When you close schools and give people a little time, hey, guess what, our school's closing at the end of the year. Does that motivate people then to go out and support the district so that this stops? Or do they get mad, and does that carry over when they go
I think they get angry. Nobody wants to see a school in their neighborhood closed down, and certainly, but delaying it till November gives, the school and the public a long time to forget about it, because we all know that the public has such a short memory when it comes to anything, and certainly this puts some time and distance between the two.
I think you can look at it both ways, though. I think that they can try to sell it that, look, we are going for a smaller levy because we are also making these cuts. So I think you could have people who are angry, but then you could have people that at least appreciate, the school is actually making cuts. They are actually, doing other things besides just asking us for more money.
And you got to remember, too, these teachers have gone, 4 years without a pay raise.
Right.
I mean, there's been a pay freeze in effect, and that's certainly a selling point, I think, for the district. They have been lean, and they're running a tight ship over there, and it's just still unfortunate that the school financing problem has never been really addressed.
We always see the suburbs, they start with, we'll have to cut busing, we'll have to go to pay-to-play. Busing's not an issue in the city.
Neither is pay-to-play, really.
Pay-to-play doesn't become an issue, but at some point, do athletics have to get on the table as a possible chopping block?
Here's the problem. The parents in
realistic.
Akron can't afford to pay to play. I mean, you got many more lower-income parents in Akron. I talked to the superintendent about this about a year ago, and he said, we're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place. He said, we'd pay to play would really help out, But at the same time, these parents can't afford to pay it, and we're not going to have any of the best athletes who are going to be playing on these teams. He says, they're going to look at $500 to $600 or even $400, and they're going to say, I got to put food on the table. I can't afford that.
These families can't even afford to pay for their kids' lunches.
Exactly.
I mean, this is the families are strapped, and it's just as well as the district is strapped. So it's not even feasible to.
Nobody wants to cut sports. Nobody wants to cut the arts. Right. Nobody wants the school to close in their neighborhood. The cuts are going to have to come to somewhere or from somewhere, and as those cuts are made, we'll talk about them right here on NewsNite.
On NewsNite.net, we cover a broader range of topics than we can on the air in 27 minutes. Be part of the conversation on our Facebook page and at NewsNite.net.
Earlier, the panel mentioned there aren't that many Republicans who live in Akron. There is one. Akron's last Republican mayor, Roy Ray, making headlines this week. Stephanie, he was asked to write a letter or asked to do an assessment on the audit?
Right. Roy Ray is, as you mentioned, the last Republican mayor in Akron. He has, besides that, other very important financial, credits to his name. He was the finance chair in the Ohio Senate for many years, in charge of the state's, budget in the Senate. And then he was the chief financial officer for the University of Akron. And so Don Plusquellic, after the audit came out that put the city in fiscal caution, said to him, hey, Ray, will you come over and take a look at our books and see what you think? And so then Roy Ray did that, and his assessment was really that the city is in a stable financial position, and his letter was pretty strongly worded and said, look, I don't think that Akron should have been placed in fiscal caution. And one of the things that is most interesting about this is the fact that Roy Ray's Republican, and so is Dave Yost, who's the state auditor, who was the one who made this determination in the first place.
Does the letter carry any weight, though, at all?
Well, he doesn't really, in this case, he doesn't have any, I guess, influence in terms of the audit. I mean, Dave Yost is the one who's the state auditor. One of the interesting things that happened after I wrote the story was I got an email from someone else who I can't name, who is in a financial position in another municipality in the area, who said, look, I agree with Roy Ray on this, and I did as soon as Dave Yost came out with this opinion. And so I think that this issue is kind of interesting, and other areas that could be going under audits from Dave Yost and who could be facing the same situation Akron's in are really paying attention to this as it's continuing to unfold. This is not unique to Akron, what they're going through right now.
I think what's happening, what Dave Yost is doing, and maybe Akron and other cities too, is taking a look at the debt load that the city is carrying. I think that's the big issue right now, and I think what he's trying to do by whittling these number of accounts down is trying to force the city to reduce its debt in a more simplified way. In other words, they have 700 and some accounts, and they're supposed to get it down to about 120,
well,
140.
They have gone from 740 to 121.
But see, I think what he's really after, what they're looking at too, is the debt load that the city has, which is it's pretty severe debt load. I think other cities have the same issue, but in this day and age, how quickly are they going to get rid of that debt? It's sort of a catch-22 situation. How's the auditor going to force them to do that by whittling the number of accounts down? Is that really going to do it? Although the city claims that they paid off most, that they're not that much in debt. It's paper debt, supposedly.
Well, a big chunk of that debt is the new school buildings, which is being paid off by an income tax passed by the voters in 2003. But when you look at this huge number, and $700 million is in what I have stuck in my head, but 250 of that is already committed to the schools. It's not as big as it sounds.
Right.
Well, his two of his main concerns that he's raised is one, what Larry mentioned, which is the number of funds that the city has, and so the city says, we've significantly decreased that. And then the other big issue that he pointed to was the individual funds that had negative balances. Now, the city was saying we created a fund for every project for more transparency, and some of those funds were waiting for reimbursement from the state, from the federal government, and that's the reason they have negative balances. But at the same time, they have money elsewhere in the budget that can cover those negative balances. They, at the end of last year, ended up with a $5 million carryover to this year. So it's not that the city, is ending the year with a negative overall balance, but Dave Yost wants them to get rid of as many of those funds that have negative balances in them.
Let's remember too, a lot of these financial questions and the debt load. This is coming after the heels of the Great Recession,
right?
And that it's trickling down. It's still there, but on the optimistic side, things are picking up, and revenues are gradually increasing, and the city's going to survive this, I think.
Well, Akron is not as in bad shape as a lot of other cities. I mean, as Stephanie said, they're waiting for they're going to be getting reimbursements. It's just the fact that even the state and the federal government is slower in giving reimbursements now because of their financial situation. Mm-hmm. So Akron, if you look at Akron's overall budget picture compared to a lot of other cities, yeah, they have a heavy debt load, but they have a lot of progress and a lot of development that's come from that people are benefiting from. So, I think that, Akron's, I don't think it's as big an issue as they're trying to make it in Columbus.
We only have about a minute left, but is it a bad practice for the city to go ahead and spend money knowing that money will eventually arrive, or should they be waiting until the money's actually there to do some of these projects?
I don't think you can wait. And that's been Pasquale's mantra, is you can't wait for things to happen. You got to go out there. That's why they do all the traveling. That's why they're selling Akron the way that they do. They're spending money with the idea that eventually it's going to pay off, and you spend money to make money, and that's what they've done far more than any other city in Ohio, and they've done it with great success so far.
And there's some risk involved when you do that,
Absolutely.
when you stick your neck out. But the thing about it is, if you don't and you sit and wait, and maybe a project will go by the boards because you didn't have the money at the time to do it.
Mm-hmm. And again, we've said this on the show before, you can't judge it now. You're going to have to judge it 20 years from now, to see actually was this a successful plan. And so far, I mean, you look around and you see the strides that the city has made, and they've been great. And certainly there's a debt load there, and it will, eventually has to be addressed.
By the way, any viewer that are, if you're curious, you can take a look at the debt yourself. Just contact the city; they will send you a detailed report of how much debt there is. But when you look at it in the macro, it is pretty scary out there. So.
Certainly.
All right, well, be safe out there driving this weekend, guys. A lot of snow out there. Larry, Stephanie, Phil, thank you so much. And thanks for being with us. Remember, you can watch this broadcast again and learn more about our show with our blog over at newsnight.net. Next Friday, Jason Haas, the new president of the Akron School Board, will be with us to talk about the future of the district. Thanks for being with us, everybody. We'll see you right here next Friday for Newsnight. Good night.